Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. This is Reservations, and I'm Jeremy Blair.
And I'm Rain Wayland. Buddy, we were talking a little bit off mic about everything we've watched recently, but I didn't tell you, I saw the 2-episode premiere of Skeleton Crew.
Oh, okay.
Which is that new Star Wars show.
That's right.
I think it's got some good potential, you know.
Okay.
It's the first Star Wars show that isn't really like, when I say connected, like, you know, like Ahsoka, the Ahsoka show, even though I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It had connections to, you know, the Clone Wars show and, you know, the broader context of Star Wars. But Skeleton Crew doesn't really connect to anything necessary. It's just like a self-contained story. And I think you might actually like it.
You think?
And I mean, it's very, as we were texting about it, it's very Goonies-esque. So, like, the focal point are these kids, you know, these, like, 11, 12-year-olds.
Yeah.
Going on an adventure. And the other reason why I say it's very Goonies-esque is because they're dealing with pirates.
Oh.
And
Space pirates.
And it's space pirates, yeah. And it's something that I'm really jazzed to see, because being a lifelong Star Wars fan, hearing of tales of, you know, piracy within the Star Wars universe, they never really showed it.
Right, yeah.
If I'm being honest, they mainly just focused on the, you know, the conflict between the rebels and the Empire.
Yeah.
I think the closest we got was Solo, but even then they weren't really pirates necessarily. It was more like the mob, dealing with the mob.
Sure.
Like, there's a sound effect in the first episode where a pirate fires his blaster, but they added in a little bit of a flintlock sound.
That's fun.
So
That's cool.
you know, and then Jude Law, I mean, granted, he only really shows up till the second episode, but, you know, I'm like, you know what, I think this has got some potential. And of course, John Watts, who did the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies, co-created this show.
Okay.
So very, you know, coming of age is very, like, up his alley. Then, as I texted you, episode 2 was directed by David Lowery, which
That's
I was
so
like,
cool.
And I didn't know, dude. I didn't know to the very end, and it flashed directed by David Lowery, and I was like,
oh,
like, okay. I feel like that was his way of trying to make up for Peter Pan and Wendy, if I'm being honest.
probably. Or they're just like, Disney's just, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
I think he's working on a one for him, I think.
Yeah. I feel like I read that, yeah, he's working on a new project, which I'm
that's more
very
aligned with
for.
Like a Ghost Story and Ain't the Body Saints or Green Knight, I hope.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I know I mentioned it on the show, but if not, the last movie he made was the live action Peter Pan movie, Peter Pan and Wendy, which, like, look, it's David Lowery. That's the only reason you're gonna like it.
Yeah.
Moments of it are good, like, moments of it are fine, but and I don't fault him. David, I think, is an amazing director and writer. I just think I don't think the movie was marketed very well, and putting it straight to Disney Plus, I don't think was the way to go. But
that's how these things go these days, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. But I think you might like it. I mean, I know you don't really care that much for Star Wars. I know you love The Mandalorian.
I do. Well, the first 2 seasons, yeah.
Did you not see season 3? Or
I didn't finish season 3. I was so bored.
It picks up. I mean, you're gonna have to finish
it. It couldn't get any slower. I can tell you that. So yeah, it would have to pick up.
Well, you're gonna have to finish it because the next thing we're gonna see him in is a movie called The Mandalorian and Grogu.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have to.
I was this close.
Did you say Rogu?
I almost did. I was this close. I was like, it's not Rogu. No. Rogu.
Yeah, man. I think you might like it. You know, again, only 2 episodes. I think it's going to be 9 episodes.
That's a lot.
I think. I don't know.
That's a lot.
We'll see.
So, okay. Those of you who clicked on this episode probably noticed we lied to you. Now, listen. The original plan was for us to discuss the avant-garde biopic, The Color of Pomegranates. I watched it. I watched an accompanying supplement on the Criterion disc, breaking down each scene and telling me what everything meant. Guys, okay. For us to have successfully talked about this film, okay, we would have needed to know everything about this poet's life, basically. We would needed to know Armenian history, Armenian Christian iconography, Armenian architecture and geography as well, for us to understand the symbolism, the allegory, the representation. It was too much. I watched it, and before I watched that video or that supplement, I felt it maybe the dumbest I've ever felt watching a movie. I couldn't make heads or tails of it. I was like, what am I missing? I don't understand any of it. Like, and here's the deal. The reason why I think I felt so stupid was this adaptation of a life is not so much that they're going beat by beat, which they are technically going beat by beat through the life of this poet, which the Soviets at the time in Armenia did not like that they were using the poet's name for the title of the film, so they made them change it to The Color of Pomegranates. Or they made them just change the title and they picked The Color of Pomegranates because of all the liberties they were taking with the story of this poet's life. But instead of going through traditionally through the life of a person, they do like little vignettes and tableaus and replicating the style of miniature paintings that you would see in books and in other art forms around Armenia during that time. And so it's baffling, just the amount of information you would need to know to even get base level knowledge of what's going on. Do I have a better appreciation for it after knowing all of this? Of course. I think that it's a brilliant movie, and I think that it's very, very uniquely executed, and it is very interesting and very beautiful in the way that it's presented. But guys, it was too hard. so I told Rain this, and I said, dude, pick something else. There's no way.
Yeah. Because I hadn't watched the movie yet. I believe I was about to, right when you texted me that.
I kind of wish I waited now because I needed you to understand.
Because it was that was Friday when you had texted me that, and I was gonna watch it that night because Ashley and I were gonna stay home because Ashley had a ton of stuff for her her master's classes to finish up, and so I was like, cool, I'll have the living room all to myself to watch the movie, and then you texted me that, and I was like, oh no. But yeah, I told Mom, as we were talking about off mic, I told Mom, and she was kind of like, well, why? And then she was reading up about it while we were on the phone, and she was like, oh, I think I understand. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's a visual representation of someone's life where to understand it, you need to know who he was. And not usually how biopics work. I kind of like the idea of it, but because it's coming at it with a different perspective and at a different angle, but it's too far removed from our knowledge and even our culture, because yeah, I mean, I get some of the Christian symbolism and some of the iconography, but some of it was Armenian specific. So
yeah, I guess we're gonna have to call Serge Tarkin and then have him explain it to us.
Honestly, I was going to call Conan O'Brien. His assistant Sona Movsesian is Armenian, so we can.
And and that really shows our friendship. I jumped to System of a Down, and you jumped to a comedian.
Conan
O'Brien. But yeah, so you texted me, pick something else, and so I really was like, okay, I need to find something not necessarily easy, but something that's going to be fun to do. I initially chose definitely a future episode, not this season. But first I chose The Breakfast Club, and you're like, too easy.
That you went too far the other way. Yeah.
Yeah, I overcorrected in the wrong direction. Yeah. And so I was like, okay. So I was really scouring kind of actually our letterbox, really. I was looking at movies that I really enjoyed, and I was like, okay, how did Jeremy like it? Okay. No, he didn't really like that one. Okay, let's move on to the next one. And then I picked the one that we're doing, and because I was like, you know what? He did enjoy it. And it kind of fits in with what we were going to do today anyway. It is a biopic.
Technically, yeah.
It is kind of fitting into last week's episode, a fictionalized biopic, but a biopic nonetheless. So today, everyone, we are discussing the 2013 Japanese animation film, The Wind Rises. Now, I'm pretty sure we mentioned this when we did Perfect Blue, but you're new to Studio Ghibli movies.
Yes, this is the this would have been the second one I'd seen. I've only seen 3, so let's not go crazy. But it is by far my favorite. It's not even close.
I remember when you told me that you had watched. Which one did you watch first?
Spirited Away. I watched that one first.
Okay. Which is that's the gateway one.
Right.
You watch Spirited Away and you're hooked.
Which I liked. I did enjoy Spirited Away very much.
Yeah, you told me you watched Spirited Away, and of course I got really excited because I've seen most of this director's movies, Hayao Miyazaki, specifically. All his movies are fantastic. And we're going to get into the significance of that later, but I remember I was so excited that you had seen the Spirited Away, and I immediately told you need to watch The Wind Rises. But if memory serves, I also told you watch Howl's Moving Castle and then The Wind Rises,
which I've not seen. Howl's Moving Castle yet.
I still think you'll really enjoy Howl's Moving Castle. It's very fantastical, and it's based on a British novel. Which I've been really fighting the urge to buy because I'm worried it won't live up to what I've seen.
Sure.
But anyway, yeah, I remember telling you watch The Wind Rises. It's unlike any of his other films. Which now I can't say because I haven't seen The Boy and the Heron yet.
Which I have. That's the other one I've seen. And I really like The Boy and the Heron. I mainly watched it. I was really okay. So at first I was sort of lukewarm about it. It's like, whatever. It's like, it's exciting. It's another Miyazaki. I know, he keeps saying, sorry, brain's dying. He keeps saying he's going to retire and then he does another movie. And so, I knew after this film, after The Wind Rises, he was like, I'm done. And then now he did The Boy and the Heron. And so it was very exciting and there was a lot of buzz and whatever. I was like, all right. I mean, I might see it. I don't know. And then Robert Pattinson is the Heron, and I was like, okay. And then I heard his voice. Whatever, dude. I'm in. So, and it was great. I did enjoy that one as well. And I don't know if Grave of the Fireflies counts. I don't know if that's a Ghibli or not, technically.
It is. It's not a Miyazaki, though.
Right.
I can actually list off all his movies. I haven't seen all his movies, so I'm not going to claim to be an expert. I still haven't seen Princess Mononoke. Still haven't seen Porco Rosso, Ponyo, or The Boy and the Heron, and that's it really. But I've seen Nausicaa. I've seen Spirited Away. Oh, Castle in the Sky. I haven't seen Castle in the Sky.
Oh, okay.
But I've seen Nausicaa, I've seen Spirited Away, Howl's Moving Castle, this Kiki's Delivery Service.
I've also seen Kiki's Delivery Service. I'm sorry, I've seen that one. Haley liked that movie, which I was surprised by.
And of course, My Neighbor Totoro. So. Yeah. But anyway, this movie is so different when you look at his other filmography, because not only one is it an adaptation, which of course he's no stranger to, with Howl's Moving Castle also being an adaptation, but it is a biopic, of someone Hayao would have known. I mean, not known personally, but he would have known in his own country's history, who was very significant to Japanese history and culture. But I love that he chose to do this adaptation from a manga that was produced, and also kind of a book that was written shortly around that time in 1937. I should probably do our job at this point, because I feel like we're about to get into it.
Yeah.
So the Wind Rises.
Right.
The Wind Rises is a recount of Japanese aeronautical designer Jiro Horikoshi, and his life becoming so obsessed with planes and wanting to design them. But he unfortunately is born kind of in a wrong time, because he wants to design them when the country's broke. It is Japan's Great Depression in the late 20s, and the country's broke, so they can't really produce the planes that Jiro and his best friend Hanjo are wanting to design. Hanjo is very cynical compared to Jiro's optimism. And through Jiro, we get to see how times change, how in order to make the planes that they want to make, they have to take government contracts, and make essentially war machines, which Jiro doesn't really care for. He just wants to make something beautiful. He wants to make something functional. But during all this, he finds love and learns the cost of love, I guess, which kind of ties into our title as well. And really, that's The Wind Rises. There's so many layers to this movie, and as I texted you after I finished it, I really forgot how devastating it was.
Yeah, it can get pretty pretty devastating at times.
Yeah, Ashley and I saw this. I remember the first time we saw it. Ashley and I both being very big fans of Hayao Miyazaki. We had heard about the movie. We'd heard that it was his final film, and I found it, I want to say, at Walmart and on Blu-ray, and I was like, we're watching this. And I remember we both really loved it, but we were like, that was just so different. It still has a lot of the same Miyazaki flair, like, the power of dreams, and a lot of his films kind of delve into dreams and dream logic in a way. But I think what he's so good at, and we will for sure do Spirited Away at some point, is human nature. I think that's why this movie feels so different, because it's happening in a real time, and it is kind of a period piece, but we're getting to see how these people function during that time. Unlike, I'll use like Howl's Moving Castle, where it's a purely fictional world, and seeing how those people interact. It's
well, it's more of a
There's kind
fantasy
of a
world in that it's, I
yeah.
mean, there are characters, there are like creatures um and fantastical elements, where this doesn't have any of that, save for the dreams, the dream sequences, which I really appreciated. I liked that this is very straightforward. um the animation is to die for. I mean, it's gorgeous. It's beautifully done. I don't know how they animated this, but the wind is so well done.
Mm-hmm.
Because of course it needs to be. It's for this film.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean it's incredible. And yeah, I mean, taking real moments from Japanese history, having um a fictionalized version of this person who engineered and designed this airplane, that would go on to have an impact in their stance in World War II, which I thought was very interesting. In that it didn't focus so much on that. I feel like if it had focused a lot on the war itself, which it doesn't really even show you any war footage, or they
Mm-mm.
didn't. There's not. They don't show the plane being used in wartime, which I appreciated, because Jiro didn't want it to be a war plane anyway,
Yeah.
and which I appreciated. And again, it shows sort of the cost of building your dream, and the cost of achieving your dream. And and in this movie's case, it is sort of a bittersweet ending, because he he was telling that man, I forgot his name, I apologize, the Italian
Caproni.
gentleman, thank you, just telling him that none of those planes made it back, the ones he designed and the ones that they used in World War II. And that's where we get that line in our title of our episode, that they're cursed dreams. These, because of the intention of the machine that he created and that he designed and that he engineered, the intention of them made them cursed in a way.
Mm-hmm.
This is sort of an anti-war film ingrained in this biopic, which I also appreciated. And I guess I'll get to this early because I can't wait, is the decision to have voice actors do the sound effects for the planes, the wind, the earthquake, the explosions, the pistons, the wind. I mean, having a human voice do that is very interesting, and I really, really, really like that.
Yeah. I am, again, having seen a lot of Miyazaki's films, I love that each one has gotten progressively better, and he's taking more and more risks with each one. Like, Howl's Moving Castle is my favorite. I truly love this fantasy. I think the American voice cast is fantastic. Billy Crystal is my favorite as Calcifer, this little fire demon. But yeah, with this one, I think because at the time he was like, this was my final film, I think he really wanted to, he's like, let's just do stuff we've never done before.
Yeah.
With using voice actors to voice the wind. And, I never really caught that the first time Ashley and I saw it, but this rewatch I did, especially with the fire.
Yeah.
And the groaning. I was like, that doesn't sound like it sounds natural, but not of the natural world,
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, then reading up on that, I was just like, that's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think I noticed the first time I watched it. For sure I did. Because I I recognized that it wasn't right. Like it wasn't like a Foley artist in a room, making sound effects. That it sounded like human voices or human sound effects. And I loved it. I was like, dude, give me more of that. It invokes a bit of more of that dream logic you had mentioned, which this film also does perfectly. I think is when he's thinking of a design, or when he's trying to solve a problem, or thinking of solutions, and doing some trial and error with airplanes and whatever. The way that it's visually represented of him thinking and of him, problem solving or whatever. I couldn't get enough of that either.
Yeah, I kind of going back to last week, I love that he can see in his head how it's going to look and then what's going to fail.
Mm-hmm.
And if that fails, then everything else fails.
Right.
Again, kind of like with last week of Mozart, knowing what's in his head and how to put it on the page.
Right.
Yeah, man, I didn't really appreciate it the first time we saw it, but seeing this again, I was like, man, that's so cool. And again, what we talked about last week is it shows someone who understands this but is good at it.
Yeah.
He understands the math, but also like, okay, well, like when he's explaining the cable that they can put into the wing to take pressure off.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that we see the representation of, well, this, if the wing does this, it'll pull the cable.
Yeah.
That way it'll create less stress for the wing. And I love that Martin Short, who voices his boss, says, well, we'll have to make the wing bigger then. Like, and then he immediately like, okay, I'll get some calculations for you.
Yeah. It's someone who loves and is so devoted to this one thing and is able to be very proficient at that thing. Which I like. I thought this time I was watching it, and him as a kid and asking for those magazines, and the teacher saying that it's not in Japanese, and him going, "Oh, that's okay, I have a dictionary." And I'm like, I don't think I've ever, as a kid for sure, I don't know if I was ever that passionate about anything. I wouldn't have put in that much work for anything. That's crazy. Especially a language barrier. That's such a huge, that's a huge obstacle to overcome.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, man. I don't think, I don't think I think the only thing I put that much passion into when I was a kid was maybe video games, and it doesn't matter if there's a language barrier, you can still figure it out,
That's true.
But yeah, and I love that that's how we, I like that Miyazaki for this movie doesn't give us title cards like, 5 years later.
Right.
I love that we cut from when Jiro is like, I'm going to be an engineer. We cut to he's already in university and he's on his way back from a home visit. Like I love that these transitions continually happen. That then he's from graduated university, he's already got a job at Mitsubishi. Like excuse me. I love it. Because I think it also goes in with the other plot of the movie, which is his love story, which I was going to say for a little later, but I guess I'll just say it now.
Might as well.
Everything I found, the only parts of this that are fictionalized is his personal life. Supposedly everything else is almost dead on.
Cool.
The things that they changed were he didn't have a younger sister, he had an older brother, and his wife didn't suffer from tuberculosis, and he didn't meet her when they were younger, during an earthquake.
That's a little too fantastical, right? It's a little too storybook and fairy tale-ish. But I did appreciate that they threw in, real life events like the 1923 earthquake
Mm-hmm.
that devastated Japan. I mean, that's a big deal, and they
Mm-hmm.
put it into the story, and that's and it also tells you what year it is. So if you know when that happened, you can decipher what year it is and how long before World War II began.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I love how time passes too with it. Because I didn't know that until after seeing the movie. I was like, so what's up with that earthquake? And then I read about it and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
which goes hand in hand with Jiro when he's an adult working for Mitsubishi and the country's broke. Because even Hanjo says it, this will be the end of Tokyo. Because not only does that earthquake happen, but a fire breaks out.
Right.
And, most of the city gets torched. So, Japan was really not doing very well.
No, not
leading up to World War II, and then post World War II.
Of course.
Now, of course, they're doing fantastic. But yeah. But I like that they include this sort of resentment for their own country particularly with Hanjo. Japan's always 10 years behind. I find it very interesting because I think that's it's a very real thing for someone to be very proud of their country, but also to be like, but we're never going to catch up to everyone else. We're stuck in the past.
Right.
And I like that. And again, it's something so new to see in Miyazaki's films. And it goes so well with the story. And again, like I said at the top of the show, Hanjo is sort of like this, not parallel to Jiro, but Jiro's a little bit more optimistic. I mean, Jiro recognizes Japan has its problems, but he gets the same food when they're in university together. When they're living together, he gets the same sponge cake on his way home from work. Jiro still is an optimist, especially, again, like I mentioned with his love story. His wife, during this time, they had no cure for tuberculosis, and he still chooses to marry her and wants to be with her, even though he knows she doesn't have a lot of time left. Also, I was going to talk about the voice cast, but I wanted to mention this now before I forgot. I thought it was so funny that Joseph Gordon-Levitt plays Jiro. Emily Blunt plays I can't pronounce her name, but plays his wife. But then Emily Blunt's real life husband, John Krasinski, plays Hanjo, and I just find that so funny that her real life husband was relegated to the best friend role.
Yeah.
And Joseph Gordon-Levitt gets to be the husband character. I just thought it was really funny. But yeah, I think that's why the end of the movie with Jiro, and tying into our title, is kind of so devastating, because it seems like he has lost his optimism.
He's gone through so much hardship and so much heartbreak, and yet he's still, he's imagining this conversation, essentially, and he seems to have a positive outlook. He seems to have sort of an optimistic view of the future and where to go from here and all of that. Even though his machines were used for wartime, and it was something that he never wanted for his machines, and that not only were they used in war, but they lost. And so, his craftsmanship was, destroyed, all of it. And his wife obviously passing, from tuberculosis, which, also some countries don't have the cure either. So
Yeah,
still,
that's
to
true.
this day, ask John Green. He's the author. He's fighting for more tuberculosis assistance and awareness. But yeah, and I do really like this idea of him periodically checking in with what was his name again?
Caproni.
Caproni. I thought that was
Or we could just say Stanley Tucci, because
right, Stanley Tucci. Yeah, no, I thought that was great. I thought that was a really cool story idea of him sort of going, as a kid, hey, I want to make airplanes. And when he's older, hey, I'm getting the chance to, be an engineer. And then a little bit later, hey, I've made airplanes, I have achieved my dream and my goal. And because he didn't really have any sort of Japanese influences for his dream, because like you said, broke, can't really make these incredible airplanes, and he could get airplane literature through other countries. So I like that. I like that they're they're being true to that side of Japan, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good point, man, because you're right. As a kid, he grew up reading about an Italian engineer. Later in his career, he's sent to Germany to see how Germany builds planes. So he doesn't really have any references to go on in his home country. Because yes, it goes in with the times that they're in their Great Depression, so they're broke. So they can't make these fantastical planes made of metal that don't blow up,
Or
which
don't go very fast.
or don't go very fast. But he really was like, well, then I'm going to be the one to do that then.
Right.
And I love that he still was like, then I'm going to do it. I'm going to take these influences, but I'm going to make it mine. And I think maybe that's what it was with the dream sequences of him checking in with Caproni. And what I love about the dream sequences is, most, maybe I'm overthinking it, but most dream sequences, I've always kind of viewed them as, well, it's the person's subconscious telling them what they want to hear. But I don't think Miyazaki's doing that with these dream sequences. I think he's portraying it as a legitimate conversation between Caproni and Jiro, almost like Caproni is in his dream being like, well, this is what I had to go through.
Right.
Which I love more, because it adds, again, sort of that fantastical element to it, but also I feel like a way to help Jiro with his own journey at becoming an engineer and designing the planes that he designs.
Right. I saw these sequences as sort of like they're on another plane of consciousness having this conversation with one another. Like I agree with you that I think you could interpret it as just his subconscious, he's learned all of this stuff about Caproni, therefore he can sort of infer, of Caproni's viewpoints. But no, I choose to believe that this is the fantastical element of the movie, and of this sort of Miyazaki trademark, which deals in the fantastical and the fantasy and the in the unbelievable. And I choose to believe that this is part of that he is really speaking with Caproni in this in his dreams.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, man. And it adds so much more to his perseverance, to his not wanting to stay the course, and wanting to break free. Even Hanjo wants to be, to do that. He wants to design planes, but as he tells him, like, but we have to do this. If we want to design planes, we have to make war machines.
Right.
Which I don't want to do either. Now I want to talk about real quickly, because I didn't realize who it was. Also, because I didn't know who it was because we hadn't started the show yet. But Werner Herzog's weird character. I have so many questions about him, and he's only in the movie for like 15 minutes, if that.
At most, yeah.
And his character's so strange, and and I want to know if that person was real or not, or if he was like an amalgam character. Because
you mean like a real person? Yeah, I don't know. I wish I knew. Like, maybe there were more. Like, probably during this time, I'd like to say during that specific time in the movie, it's probably early 1930s, maybe. Because
it's meant to be
early 1930s, then you could argue that because of the rise of the Nazi Party, that Germans are starting to leave the country. And that would explain why this German man is living in Japan.
Yeah, because I mean that's pretty much what they're saying, is that
or even if they were in Japan. I don't know if they were in they were in Japan at that during that summer, right?
Yes, yeah. Because it's meant to be implied that he also didn't vibe with Nazism.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
I'm out.
Yeah.
But then, like, I would say out of any question I have about the movie, it is Werner Herzog's character. Because then Jiro's getting investigated because he hung out with him for a summer. Like,
yeah, I think he was supposed to be some, high-ranking someone or other, perhaps.
Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. That part, I struggle with these sort of things in film because I don't know the history. I don't understand it. And so when it came to that stuff, I just kind of was like, okay, fine, it's happening. I'm not going to put too much stock into it because I don't know. So he's being investigated. Jiro himself is a high-ranking member of Mitsubishi, right?
Yeah.
Making military airplanes. So, and he's hanging out with he was seen hanging out with a German. That's weird, right? Especially during this time. Tensions are starting to run high, and the conflict is almost here. So, that would be my guess. And then, of course, his boss is also saying that, other people have been investigated. I think he said his brother was investigated. They went through his mail, all that stuff.
Yeah. I would say, like, I don't have many, I wouldn't say qualms. I would just say questions about the movie, but that's one.
Mm-hmm. Because then Manny Patinkin's character isn't in it for very long either, but he seems to be sort of like a Secret Service type. Telling Jiro about, what he can expect from the investigation and how that's going to affect his life and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, with that being said, I do want to talk about the voice cast, because there's a lot of people in this movie I kind of forgot were in the movie. Like his father-in-law, Jiro's father-in-law, is voiced by William H. Macy, which I was like, okay. His sister is voiced by Mae Whitman. Many might know her, Roxy from Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Because I was like, I know that name, and I was like, oh my god, that's Roxy. The honestly, my favorite part of that whole movie, the fact that he we're not going to get into it because this movie doesn't need Scott Pilgrim's jokes anyway. And then of course, like I said earlier, Martin Short as Jiro's boss, Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I don't know how. I don't know if Miyazaki has any say in the English dubbing, but they always manage to get such a fantastic cast.
Yeah.
With all of them. I mean, as you were just saying with The Boy and the Heron with Robert Pattinson, you know, there's also Florence Pugh's in that one. Willem Dafoe, Dave Bautista, so many fantastic actors. And what I love about the English dubs, which, you know, we talk about in Perfect Blue, especially with Miyazaki's films, is they pick cast American voice actors that just nail it every time. Like I'll be honest, I've seen some dubs that I'm just kind of like, oh, okay. And it just doesn't really work. But they always seem to nail it. I mean, again, Howl's Moving Castle, Christian Bale is Hal.
Yeah.
And his voice works so well.
Well, I was reading, I don't know why I was on Howl's Moving Castle, but I was reading that he saw Spirited Away, said, I think he was offered, or he asked to be in the next one. He asked to be in Howl's Moving Castle, and he ended up getting the lead role. He didn't know. He didn't care. He just wanted to be in it. He goes, I want a part of this. I don't care what it is.
And I think maybe that's what it is too. Is that because again, you know, Miyazaki. I mean, all the directors at Studio Ghibli are fantastic, but Miyazaki's films are just on a whole nother level. And I don't know what it is. I don't know.
Once you get to The Boy and the Heron, it's sort of like, yeah, of course, they're brilliant and everyone wants a piece of it. But, you know, then it's sort of just like word of mouth, kind of like with Christian Bale. It's like, I saw this, therefore I want to be a part of the next one because it's so incredible. And and so, yeah, I'm seeing here, okay, Elijah Wood is in this as well.
Yeah, I saw that last night.
And so is Ronan Farrow. Those of you who don't know who Ronan Farrow is, he's become somewhat of a journalist, you know, more recently. But he is the son of Mia Farrow. But who the dad is up to you. I choose to believe. I choose to believe it's Frank Sinatra, but or you can think it's Woody Allen. It's up to you. I think if you've looked at Ronan Farrow's face, it's Frank Sinatra, but who cares, right? But yeah, he's become somewhat of a journalist. I think he's sort of an investigative journalist. It's my understanding. But yeah, I saw Ronan Farrow's in this, and I thought that was so weird. And of course, there's a whole list of voice actors who are legitimate professional voice actors. So that's all they do. Richard Stephen Horvitz, who he's Zim in Invader Zim. He's also Billy in The Great Adventures of Billy and Mandy. So I mean, like, he's like a legitimate voice actor. So I'm glad to see that they're also getting work, because I do hate most of the time that big A-list actors get these meaty voice roles, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
these incredible opportunities that it's sort of like, you know, I there are people who can do it that are already doing it, you know?
No, I get what you're saying.
Yeah,
It's the same. Hang on, everyone. We'll get back to The Wind Rises. It's like what everyone says about Chris Pratt being Mario and Garfield.
sure.
Like,
There's no reason he
um,
needed to be either of those, number one. But um I mean, I saw Super Mario Bros. It was fine. I didn't mind it. It was cool, you know, whatever. But
and I would say Chris Pratt only has like 30% speaking lines. He doesn't talk a lot.
thank God. But um but yeah,
But no,
I love the art of voice acting. I think it's so fascinating. I think and if you follow any of these people on social media, it's a very close, tight knit group. I mean, these guys all know each other, and um,
mm-hmm.
they all do the fan festivals and the conventions and all that circuit. They do all that, especially with Japanese animation and anime. I think the dubbing for that, there's a huge fan base for certain American or English speaking the voice actors that do that, do
Yeah.
those roles.
Yeah, like I was telling you about that show, The Legend of Vox Machina, um, that was based on a D&D campaign from a group called Critical Role, and everyone in the group are voice actors, and they all got to voice their characters from the campaign.
Yeah.
So, well, and thankfully with the most recent strike, voice actors are hopefully getting much more recognition and jobs. But yeah, but no, I see what you're saying. Back to the back to the cast of this film. I do see what you're saying, but I think
I don't necessarily have a problem
that
with it all the time.
no,
It's still fun. I mean, I of course like intellectually I understand that. Like, I wish I could get as excited about a professional voice actor voicing a heron, but instead I was so excited because Robert Pattinson's doing it
Pattinson.
in this batshit crazy voice that came out of nowhere, you know? So I do appreciate that he's putting in work. Like, he's putting in effort to do something that is not his speaking voice, which I appreciate.
Yeah. And I think that's where the difference is. So I don't mean to keep ragging on Chris Pratt.
No, we can't. Okay.
I think, well, I like him as an actor.
Sure.
I think he's gotten a lot of flack for things that are deserved. But we're not going to get into that. But Chris has one voice. And when I saw the trailer for Mario, I'm like, oh, okay, so he's just Chris Pratt. And then I saw the trailer for Garfield and I was like, oh, so he's just Chris Pratt. Chris is a good actor, physical live action actor. I mean, look at Guardians of the Galaxy,
sure.
The first Jurassic World. He's a good actor, but he's not a good voice actor. And I think that's where the distinction is, especially because he's not trying to do anything different with his voice,
Right.
Like a perfect example for our film, Emily Blunt. You could have told me that was anyone but Emily Blunt, and I would have probably believed you.
Yeah.
Because it really didn't sound like her.
Right.
Of course, she's speaking in more of a, I wouldn't say American accent, but a more
it's not
American.
So
yeah, an American English accent. To, I guess, fit with the other American actors that were cast in the role.
Yeah, probably. Now, I will say, thinking about it for the past 10 minutes or whatever we've been talking about this, I think what it is it brings legitimacy to the dub.
Okay.
Having reputable A-list actors that at this point desperately want to be a part of it. Because it's Hayao Miyazaki, it gives validity to it. It's not like you're having to slum through the English dub because you don't want to read subtitles. It's you want to hear the English dub because it's going to be professionally done. And they put in effort, and they're putting in, there's a budget for the English dub that gets taken seriously, and it's okay to listen to the English dub. Because again, we've talked about it before, there's a lot of fucking shame and how do I want to put it? There's that distinction, the two schools of thought, the sub or dub. You have these clashing groups that one thinks that they're better than everybody else because they're reading. Sometimes you don't want to read. I get it. I'm watching some of these movies back here. I have to read. I get it. If I don't have to, I'm not going to. Especially with the Miyazaki, I want to be able just to stare at the beautiful animation. So I think that's probably what it is in this case. Is it's bringing validity to the English dub? Would be my guess.
No, and that makes sense.
Because I think
again,
most
like
of
you said,
them are stacked like that.
Oh yeah. I mean, Castle in the Sky has Shia LaBeouf in it. Porco Rosso has Michael Keaton.
Yeah, and Carrie Elways. Yeah, cool. Yeah, sorry, I'm looking at the Porco Rosso because I might be interested in that one.
Porco Rosso, from what I remember, sounds pretty wild because he can like turn into a pig.
Yeah, or
he's
turned
like cursed.
into a pig. Yeah, I think he's cursed. Yeah.
But then I think. But I will say, I think Spirited Away is what changed that. Because Spirited Away had more voice actors.
That's right.
Jason Marsden, for example, as Haku. For those of you who know who Jason Marsden is, great. For those of you who don't, he's Thackeray Binks, or one of our most popular episodes, he's Max Goof from a Goofy movie.
Yep.
But then there's also the voice actress who plays Meg from Hercules. She's also in Spirited Away. I think Spirited Away is what changed that. I think everyone saw Spirited Away and they're like, "Oh my god!"
Dakota Fanning,
like Christian Bale said,
the girl, yeah,
yes, and she's that. I mean, that was in the kind of the beginnings of her career.
Yeah, let's see. When Spirited Away came out in 2001, so yes, that's
well, when the dub came out, because the original I think came out. I don't know when. I'm not going to guess either.
Yeah, Jason Marsden. Yeah. Oh, Tara Strong. Yeah, these are people I know.
Yeah. And I think Spirited Away is what changed that, and that then they started getting these big A-listers who are like, I want to be involved.
Well, because it was like, huge. It was such a big hit.
Yeah. And again, I think what we've been discussing for the last couple of minutes is that distinction of they're getting these A-listers, but these A-listers are putting in the work. They're not just, again, don't mean to rag on Chris Pratt, they're not just doing their regular voice. Perfect example, Martin Short as Jiro's boss. When Ashley and I first saw the movie, I was like, I know that voice. But I was like, I don't want to look it up yet. I don't want that to change my opinion on everything.
Oh,
the movie continued.
I'm sorry. Correction. It is not Dakota Fanning. It's Yeah.
You okay there, buddy?
Can't pronounce that name, which is insane because it's one of those, you slap a IEGH on the end of it, and I lose my mind. Anyway, she plays Donnie Darko's little sister in Donnie Darko. So but I can't. And she also plays Lilo. That's weird. I didn't know that in Lilo and Stitch. Anyway,
no shit.
Yeah. Why did I think?
Oh, she was also the girl from The Ring.
Oh yeah,
DeVay.
Thank you. I would have never gotten there. I'm not embarrassed enough to admit that I would have never have gotten to DeVay.
Yeah, but anyway, so Martin Short. Right. So I knew I recognized the voice, but I was like, but it sounds different. I don't know who that is. And when the movie ended and I saw Martin Short Kurokawa, I was like, oh shit. Like you could have, like, yeah. So I think that's where the distinction is. I think that these A-listers are coming in, but they're like, we'll do the work. We will take this just as seriously as if we were acting on film. And I think that's where the distinction is. And I think Miyazaki and even Studio Ghibli as a whole, I think, has earned that reputation that these actors are like, we're going to put in the work, we're going to put in the time to make sure we are doing this correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just find it funny that probably for the last 15 minutes we've been talking about voice acting.
That's okay.
But again, I think we even said it in our Perfect Blue episode, you know, with going back to sub versus dub, it is an important thing to discuss because, you know, like what you were just saying with, you know, sometimes, you know, voice actors know what they're doing because that's all they do. You know, again, I'm going to use Critical Role as an example. The leader, who's usually the DM, Matt Mercer, he plays all the other characters that they experience in their campaign, and he's got a voice for every single one of them.
Yeah.
And it's insane. But if you were to ask someone like, let me think of a really versatile actor. This person only just came to mind because I just watched a video with them, like Amy Adams, for instance.
Oh, I love Amy. Yeah.
She's a very versatile actor. I think we've spoken at links about how much we love Amy Adams.
Yeah.
I don't think she could pull something like that off, though.
You don't think so?
I know.
Wow.
I think she could put in the time and the work, but I don't think she could. Like, if they were to give her a list of characters,
that's a special
say,
skill.
all right, Amy, yeah. If they were to give her a list of skills and say, okay, characters, and say, okay, Amy, give us a voice for each one of these characters. I think she could do it, but after she had time to think about it. With most voice actors, it seems like they can kind of come up with it on the spot. All that being said, I think this cast is fantastic. They really put in the time and the work.
Yeah.
They don't squander their position in being in a Miyazaki film. I think is what we've been saying for like I said, for the last like 15 minutes.
This is okay. So, I mean, going back to just the movie as a whole, as far as Japanese animation goes, because again, we've made this distinction a couple of times. I do not consider this anime. I consider this Japanese animation. Man, I mean, it's up there with Perfect Blue because I think Perfect Blue might be my favorite. Just because I like that sort of, you know, mystery thriller, psychological drama, but this one is, man, it's so good. And the whole time I was thinking just how they did the wind. I don't know. It was so remarkable to me. That the animation was just so smooth. It was sort of like Akira smooth almost.
Oh yeah.
I don't think they put in that much work. Because Akira was entirely hand drawn, truly 24 frames a second, sort of smooth. But I don't know, this one just seemed, it was just, I don't know. I love this movie, and I was surprised of how much I enjoyed it. But again, I think it has to do with like we were saying, some of the creative choices, like using voice actors for sound effects. I really liked that. The visuals are just so striking and so beautiful, and so um, they're so rich, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, it's incredible. The voice acting is good. It's not a standout for me, if I'm honest. Like Joseph Gordon-Levitt is not doing anything incredible. He's speaking, which is fine. They needed someone with that style of voice to represent Jiro, and that's fine. But really, it's all about the visuals, the story, and the music. The music is also incredible.
I agree. I agree. Um, Speaking of Joseph Gordon-Levitt, I just want to say this joke real quick. What would you have done if at any point Jiro was like, "So who's she eating lunch with?"
I forgot. That's right. We've done Rick already.
I couldn't think of any other line from that movie, just because the cadence of how they speak in that movie is not
Totally
easily
different.
replicated.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're not talking about Brie. We already did that. But yeah, no, I agree, man. And again, I think it's because Miyazaki went into this film being like, "This is my final film.
Mhm.
I'm not pulling any punches. I'm going to take risks. I'm going to do things that I haven't done in my previous films." And I think that's why this movie is so good. I think it's why we can sit here and we could talk about just the wind of the animation.
Yeah.
Or we could talk about the music, and we could talk about the story. I think it's because he really went into this like, I'm not making any more films after this.
What a way
And I
to have
think it
gotten
was
out too. Man, that would have been so. I mean, The Boy and the Heron is good. Okay, I don't know if it's this good. I think this one's better, honestly.
well,
Whatever.
and I believe the reason why he was suddenly deciding it was time to take a break or to leave, I think it was because, one, his age. He's
old.
fairly old.
Yeah.
But two, I think he was recognizing that hand-drawn animation was going away, and it was switching to hand-drawn on a computer. And I think it was, I believe, if I remember correctly, I think he wasn't, I don't think he was shying away from that technology. I think he was just like, that's not how I want to make my movies, though. And I think I think he knew that hand-drawn was just going to take too long.
Sure.
And I think that's why it was like, okay, well, if this is how I'm going to go out, this is how I'm going to go out. But I distinctly remember seeing a video of someone introducing him to using 3D animation through a computer, through a drawing pad, and he was just like, he just loved it. He thought it was really the coolest thing ever. And I think that's maybe what inspired him to be like, okay, I'm going to come back for one more movie. Now, I don't know if The Boy and the Heron is his retirement movie, but look, if he chooses to let that be his final movie, great.
Yeah.
But I hope he's got just one more in him.
I think you'll really like The Boy and the Heron.
I do too. I was really excited to see it. Of course, we never got it here, but thankfully it's on Max now, and I can watch it on Max. Yeah. With that being said, buddy, are you ready to wrap up?
Yes.
Yeah.
Again, it's incredible. It is by far my favorite so far. I'm interested in some other ones. I'll probably end up seeing Howl's Moving Castle. My one of my best friends, who's in his 70s, his name's Shep. I'm sure I've mentioned it before.
Yeah.
He saw it and he loved it. He told me that I would love it, and I was like, all right, I don't know, maybe. And I might see Poco Rosso. That looked interesting to me. I really don't have any desire to see like My Neighbor Totoro. I don't know. That doesn't, that doesn't interest me at all.
If I'm being honest,
he's like the face of Studio Ghibli. Like he's,
I think you would only really like Totoro. Dakota Fanning is the little girl in Totoro.
See, that's probably
That's
what I
where
was thinking of. Yeah.
And Elle plays her younger sister. So
there you go.
Yeah. But anyway, I think Totoro you would only really like for two reasons. One, it's very cute.
Sure.
It's a very adorable movie. But two, I think you would like it because you're a father now. And specifically, you have a daughter.
Yeah.
Because the movie really is a story of fathers and daughters and family, really. But
Well, then I might cry. Now I'm definitely not going to see it.
Yeah, I was going to say then you might
knock yourself out of a sail there. Jump.
I think you would like it though. I do.
Yeah,
I mean, if not, you would like it for those two things. For that, it is very cute and very adorable. Totoro himself as a character is adorable. He's just the fluffiest little guy.
Yeah,
he's not little. He's actually huge. How they draw him, he's huge,
gigantic.
Yeah, I would definitely maybe say check out Nausicaa. I believe Nausicaa is his first, not really his first film, but I think his first film under Studio Ghibli. Nausicaa's a little rough in terms of story, but it's still good. Like I said, I haven't seen Castle in the Sky. That one seems interesting. I desperately, I kept my copy of Princess Mononoke because I've heard that movie is just absolutely amazing.
Really?
All
right.
Yeah. But yeah, man, I'm glad that I was able to convince you to watch this one, and I'm glad you really liked it because I remember when we became friends in high school, you always told me I'll never watch anime.
Yeah,
I'll never watch that. And now, granted, yes, we've made the distinction. This is Japanese animation, but now you've seen, let's see, at least 5 films. Yeah,
that's a good point. Yeah.
Well, buddy, with that being said, what movie are we actually going to do next week that we're not going to lie to? Yeah, we're not going to lie to our audience.
Well, I was looking at my list and like we've done 2 biopics in a row, and I still have a few to go, and I'm like, we need to break that up. We can't just keep doing biopics. That's crazy, right? That was unintentional. But anyway, so a few years ago, this movie came out, and finally people saw what I saw, which so okay, for context, people saw the Twilight films and they're like, Robert Pattinson sucks. Okay, hold on. People say Robert Pattinson sucks, right? But I'm like, no. Have you seen Rover? Have you seen Cosmopolis? Have you seen Maps to the Stars? And they're like, no, we've never heard of any of that, right? And I go, no, listen, Robert Pattinson is incredible. And then finally in 2017, the Safdie brothers gave us Good Time, and people got it. People understood that Robert Pattinson is incredible and always has been. Save for, those 5 movies or what. So next week we are talking about Good Time. And so take your Xanax, and we're gonna take this ride.
So I'm so excited. I'm 90% certain I mentioned it on our Uncut Gems episode with my mom. That even though I loved Uncut Gems, I feel like Good Time is more anxiety inducing than Uncut Gems. What did I just say? I feel like I just mixed up my words.
No. Good Time, you're right. Good Time to me has a higher level of anxiety than Uncut Gems did.
Because I think the Safdies pull off in both movies, setting that anxiety bar high the moment the movie starts.
Yeah.
But just something about Good Time, I'm just like, Jesus Christ. I distinctly remember watching this movie again on my own. I think it was when it was on Netflix. I was like, oh, Robert Pattinson. And I think this is when I started to have my viewpoint of him turn. I was like, sure, I'll check this out.
Yeah.
And I was like, sure, I'll check this out. And the moment it started, I was just like, Jesus Christ. and I'm sure, like what we'll discuss next week, I didn't breathe a sigh of relief until he's in the cop car. I was just like, oh my God, it's over.
Yeah, you're just like, oh, thank God. You know?
Yeah. But I loved it. I loved every minute of it. And look, I'm a little disappointed the Safdies aren't working together anymore, but you know what? It's okay. They gave us these 2 movies, and I'm so excited that we're doing good time.
Benny Safdie, tremendous actor.
Oh yeah, bro.
I mean,
yeah,
very, very good. Because like I'm watching Good Time, and he does play a character who is developmentally behind, mentally developmentally behind. And I go, oh, that's really interesting. And then, I'm, reading more about it. I go, oh, that's one of the directors. That's crazy. And then in Oppenheimer, he's got this perfect accent. I think it was good. I don't know if like a Russian person would say it like that shit, but I don't know. I thought it was good. And then in The Curse, I watched a few episodes of that before I got distracted. And he's like this sleazy, like producer, director, or whatever. He's gross, and I was like, all right, he's good, man.
Yeah, he was in, I think, 2 episodes of Obi-Wan Kenobi. And when the news broke that he was going to be in that, I was so excited. I was like, yes, let's go. Yeah. And then he's only in 2 episodes, but his character is really well written. And is really there to be a kind of a folly to Obi-Wan. Honestly, is the reason why Obi-Wan kind of decides to get off the pot in the series. But yeah, man, I'm really excited.
Yeah, he's very good. And this movie's intense, man. It's so good, man.
It is. It is so good. Yeah. Well. All right, everyone. Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode on The Wind Rises, sort of a surprise episode.
Yeah.
And we will see you next week for a good time.